Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's bonus episode of I Cast Fireball, which we call Meet and Geek. My name is Jacob, aka Lance Thalen, who will be your host for these special episodes where we will dive into the geekdom of each of our cast and how we've come to play this game that we all love. Today's cast member in the spotlight is a man that you all know. You've heard his voice every episode, even when that voice changes mid-character. It's our DM, Thomas. Thomas! How are we doing tonight?
Oh, well, I have to say that is incredibly accurate. So, I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
You're so great that sometimes we just got to bring you down a couple notches. So.
Well, I appreciate getting humbled by my players, so.
All right. Well, look at me. I'm the captain now of this episode.
Man.
Let's tell everybody why we're doing these kind of episodes. First off, if you've seen it on our social media, we've put it out there on and if you don't follow us on Instagram and Twitter at iCastFireball20, we've kind of teased this week. But let's go ahead. I'm going to ask the DM,
for sure,
our leader and extraordinaire, Thomas, why are we doing these cool little bonus episodes?
Well, in addition to, us moving the DM screen, so to speak, and, showing a little bit about ourselves to anybody who is listening to these episodes here, and to share a little bit more about ourselves, we just want to make sure that every single episode we are doing is of the same caliber that the first 8 were of. So the quality is the exact same. We're spending the amount of time that we are on episode 9 through 300, however long we go, and to do that we found we just had to slow down a little bit. We couldn't pump them out every single week and maintain that quality. We got that little bit of a buffer right at the beginning so that everybody could just start binging a little bit. But to make sure that we keep that quality content and keep that rich story and sound effects, we're just switching to an every other week release for the actual storytelling aspect of the podcast. But
gotcha.
We wanted to get content out there so people could still connect with us on a weekly basis.
Yes, and I'm not going to spoil it for the listeners out there, but we do have a couple fun variety of bonus episodes that we'd be releasing every other week. So I'm not going to reveal what those all will be, but just to let you know, there are some interesting things we're going to do with this extended time we got. And I will say something that we have gotten back from those who have left a review, which if you'd like to leave a review, please do so on Apple. But we've seen that people really love, and on social media too, in the comments, we really pride ourselves in trying to get that really crisp content of making sure the editing works, tying together, adding sound effects, and I think to be able to give our audience that, you're right, we need a little bit more extra time for our editor Mickey, who's done such an amazing job.
Seriously, again, shout out to Mickey. She is just incredible what she's doing. She makes me sound like actually an okay DM.
And that's a hard feat.
It is. It's difficult.
That's a roast.
It is difficult.
No. But no, she's making all of us. We didn't mean for this to turn into a Mickey compliment session, but
we're happy
really,
that it is.
She's made every one of our performances has been heightened by her extreme talents of editing, and we just want to give her enough time to be able to make us sound good.
Right? So shout out to you, Mickey, as you are editing this.
For that.
Pat yourself on the back. All right.
Well, let's jump into it then. Let's jump into what these special Meet and Geek episodes are all about. Like I talked about for everybody listening in the beginning, this is for us to, like Thomas also pointed out, to pull back the curtain, the DM curtain in this case, to get to know us as the players. Now, we're not going to talk about our life stories or anything. Maybe we could do that in future episodes. These episodes are specifically for us to show how we got into this game, Dungeons & Dragons, how we got into it, what from our life has inspired us to play this, or maybe we've taken from Dungeons & Dragons and has inspired us to branch out to other things as well, and also why we're in this campaign. And so that is what our episode's going to be all about, the background of us as players and as the DM for how we got involved in D&D and why we love it so much, and kind of the intricacies of each person. Because we might have some common themes, but everybody has a unique approach. That's what I love about D&D. Is everyone has a unique approach to it, and that's what we're going to find out today. So, really, we're going to focus on 3 things, and let's start out with the first thing to focus on for our background, which, Thomas, is my first question to you.
Yes.
Include that. How Thomas, how did you get into Dungeons and Dragons?
Oh man. So I think he's listening to these episodes, but I had a good friend in Arizona, Nate. Nate, you know who you are. Shout out to Nate. This was down to 3.5 edition. And he was just amazing at crafting worlds. Like, I mean, this guy, not only was he a great dungeon master and loved Dungeons and Dragons, but he would write books, like, and come up with different, like, actual novel ideas for fantasy, like, I would say, like, every 2 months. Whether he finished the book or not, he would just explain his ideas to me, and they were just, like, amazing works of art. And back then, I don't think I appreciated, truly, I don't think I appreciated, like, what D&D could be back then. I was just like, I want to kill some goblins. I want to do some cool rogue stuff. I always wanted to, like, jump. I specifically mentioned, I remember saying to him, I'll play Dungeons and Dragons if I could be a character that could grab knives, run up on a table, do a front flip, and as I'm falling down, impale an enemy goblin or whatever. And
so
he's like,
you wanted to be Lance Thalen?
Well, yeah, pretty much, actually. Yeah, pretty much. And so I remember in the session that we were playing, he was like, all right, now's your opportunity. And I was like, yes! And I was like, I do this! And he's like, all right, hold on. We have these skills checks. You have to draw, like, what's called an acrobatics check. And I was like, oh, okay. And for some reason, like, my acrobatics was, like, -1 for, like, a rogue or whatever. And so... yeah, right? And so I rolled, and I don't know, probably got, like, a 3. And I just remember, like, rolling, and he'd be like, all right, you try to do a front flip, and you fall on your back, and you're prone. And I was like, well, that's dumb.
I don't like this game.
So I was... But it wasn't until I got much older and really was able to, and I imagine a lot of people are like this, but saw Matthew Mercer do a specific one-shot with Vin Diesel. It's called D and Diesel. Shout out to Vin Diesel.
This episode is sponsored by Vin Diesel.
It's not sponsored by Vin Diesel. Not sponsored.
No. Nope.
Not sponsored by Fast 9 at all. But when I saw just that 30-minute YouTube video of what Matthew Mercer was doing and, like, how he was, like, pulling players in with, like, these story hooks and just, like, allowing them to have these, like, interactions and just seeing everybody's commitment, I was like, oh, there might be something different about this game that I hadn't considered before. And that's when I actually tried pulling Jake in, and I was like, Jake, do you want to DM? Because I don't. And he's like, I don't know how to DM. And I talked to every single one of my friends, and I was like, well, I guess if I want to experience this, I got to make it happen. So that's when I first started becoming a DM. And that was 6 years ago, something like that. Yeah, that was 5-6 years ago, and been DMing ever since.
And when you say Jake, you mean me, Jacob.
Yes, Jacob.
I go. By the way, everybody, I go by that interchangeably. So that can happen and get confusing. But yeah.
Yes.
So you started kind of your Dungeons and Dragons process. You said early on. That's kind of, is that middle school, high school?
Yeah. So it was like early high school to late high school, on and off.
Early high school. That's when you're first introduced to it, but you don't really jump fully in until college time.
Right. Yeah.
Gotcha.
With the rise of 5th edition.
Ah, gotcha. Yes. Awesome. Interesting. So, what, I guess, from that kind of how you're getting involved in DM, what were really the big, because you said the first thing that drew you in was, I want to flip on a table and kick, and then later on you say that, you know, through influencers like Matthew Mercer, who probably influences almost everybody in the D&D world, that kind of drew you in with more of the hooks and the story. What else about just building these worlds kind of fascinated you? Because you went as a player. You started out as a player in high school, and then you have become kind of, and you still do player things, and it's not like you're exclusively a dungeon master. But
true.
I guess for you, what draws you in to be a player now, and what draws you in to be a dungeon master now?
Oh man, I mean, it's as we mentioned earlier, like when we first started this podcast in our intro episode, we all of us have some sort of exposure to improvisational theater and things like that, and truly understanding of like how D&D is like so closely related to that, of like you being able to contribute just literally anything to the story and being able to shape it is just such a satisfying. It's just a satisfying experience to have that shared storytelling experience with just my friends at a table. And even though all of us are amongst 3 different states, we can still have that same amazing experience of being able to contribute whatever we want to the story. And so as a player, I love just being able to throw these right and left turns to whoever the DM is, which occasionally it's my wife, occasionally it's Ned. But truly being able to lift other people's stories up to where we all can have that amazing experience of like, oh my gosh, that's such a cool thing about your backstory, or oh my gosh, that was such a good interaction between our characters. Like that relationship, like the relationship is growing, like they're actually friends. They're communicating, But as a player, that's what I really enjoy, and as a DM, I really enjoy incorporating all of that, to be able to incorporate what all of
the puppet master.
Well, I guess you could call it that, but it's a puppet with only like one string, I will say, because you, Jacob, Mickey, and Ned are all like grabbing other limbs of this puppet and pulling it in other directions. And,
so
like,
what you're saying is we're cats and you're just playing with the cat toy.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, there you go.
No, but being able to incorporate just all of your backstories and like to have those like aha moments for players, and like for instance, in a previous backstory, not a backstory, in a previous campaign that I did with Jacob, actually with you,
yes,
you were Dragonborn, right?
I was a Dragonborn cleric, yes.
Dragonborn cleric who lost his memory, and that was like all that you had fleshed out. Like you had some like ideas of like what your family life was before, but you lost your memory entirely. And being able to be like, okay, so you lost your memory. What if that was on purpose? And what if the person that did that to you stole your children away from you on this like experience? And so like halfway through the campaign, just that came out. And you were like, with some like divine intervention, you were able to get that your memory back, and just seeing the look on your face of like, oh, what? Like that's crazy! Like I didn't expect that at all, and it's my backstory. Like, that's just so satisfying for me.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, yeah, that's so awesome. And I know a big, not argument, but a big friendly fight in the Dungeons and Dragons community is
friendly competition, if you will.
Yeah, friendly competition. Is the narrative character camp and the mechanics tactic camp of that people love D&D, drawing into being the characters in the narrative, and a lot of people are drawn into D&D because it's just a crazy cool gaming system.
Right.
And I guess where I would say, you don't have to pick one exclusively, but I say, where do you fall in kind of that friendly competition?
I mean, honestly, I hate to give this vanilla answer, but I feel like I'm straddling the line there because, I mean, I mentioned I just went off for about 5-10 minutes about how amazing it is to like get into these characters' like backstories and to incorporate them, but without being able to do some pretty sick, awesome, like cool abilities, like that it wouldn't be enhanced by that. It only enhances it. Like if you're not able to kill like a dragon at the end of the day, like with some dice rolling and have luck on your side, then it's not as satisfying as it could be, in my opinion. So you can't have one without the other. They have to marry with each other. And I found that because I've tried other tabletop like RPG systems, which are more mechanic based, and then which are more just like improv slash relationship based, and I always feel like something's missing from both of those, and I think 5th edition and other things like Pathfinder, of course, they find like a nice little it's like peanut butter and chocolate, they go perfectly together.
Not jelly.
Peanut butter and chocolate.
You know the old phrase, we go together like a peanut butter chocolate sandwich.
Your mom didn't pack you peanut butter and chocolate sandwiches when you went to elementary school?
No.
And you're like, oh man, I got a peanut butter and chocolate sandwich.
Not with my dad having diabetes. I don't think my mom's like, you know what? Let's keep this tradition going in the All right, peanut butter and chocolate. All right.
Peanut butter and chocolate.
I love it.
It's the only thing people think about when that goes together with peanut butter.
Only thing. All right. Let's move on to our next kind of big topic, because we've talked about you getting introduced to D&D, but there's a lot of things that influence us in jumping into this amazing system and this amazing world of fans and players and DMs. So my next question, I should say, is what other interests and hobbies of geekdom? We're just branching out to all of geekdom. What other interests and hobbies do you have in geekdom?
Well, I feel like I'm a pretty average geek. Maybe I'm average. Maybe I'm not. So,
audience, I will say that he says this while we're doing video chat, where I can see literally his shelves that have probably over 100. 100 board games. Yeah.
If I can,
you're average.
If I can go back, I would say
we have to go back.
There is definitely Fair point, Jacob. Yeah, so I would say in addition to D&D, I am a huge proponent of board games and just tabletop gaming in general. And Jacob is right. I have over 100 board games.
What's the number? You do you have an official number?
Not in the past month, where I bought in like a decent amount of games.
What's the most recent number that you have calculated?
Okay, recent. I'm like anything that's considered a game, including my kids' games. Probably like 103 or something like that. So yeah, so somewhere around there, and that was like last year that we counted. So
and we just went through our COVID years, so we're all staying indoors and shut up. So probably that's doubled.
Right. So Amazon was just not quite daily, but there were a couple packages at the door.
Yep.
So definitely board gaming is a huge proponent, and so I tend to gravitate towards more campaign style games. And so like anything that's like Pandemic Legacy, Mechs vs. Minions, Shadows of Brimstone, actual D&D board games, things like that. I tend to gravitate towards because I just love being able to interact with like a set of players for an extended period of time, being able to help each other, to lift each other up, and to assist each other in like each other's goals. I just think it's super satisfying. But other forms of geekdom, I grew up and love playing video games. I find I only play like multiplayer online occasionally, like Halo and things like that. But other than that, huge listener of actual play D&D podcasts, or else we wouldn't be doing one, of course, But yeah, other than that, I spent a lot of my time where me and my wife, we get through like a good board game on a date night.
Awesome. And well, you just pointed out how some of those things bleed into your love of Dungeons and Dragons. You go more toward very quest-driven games, very much where there's tactics, but there's a story going on in it.
Right. Yeah.
And sometimes there's even some acting involved in deceptions or in trying to fool another party or trying to beat the other party. So awesome. Well, this leads to kind of our last focus. Well, I should say, before I say our last focus, our last question, let me rewind a second. Any other things you want to talk about that you really have, that you have seen a direct connection between your love of Dungeons and Dragons and other things in your life?
I mean, quite honestly, this is like the third time I brought it up, and I apologize. My life doesn't revolve around this, but I just am so passionate about just like good storytelling. Just amazing storytelling. We were just so blessed in college to have such an amazing improvisation teacher, which some people are like, why do you need a teacher to teach you improvisation? But he really helped like kind of open the door into like what storytelling actually could be. And like, yeah, improvisation's super fun, but we also like jumped into like improvisation scenes that where we weren't trying to be funny, and it was like content that is like nothing to laugh at and nothing to scoff at as well, and just being able to build those stories on top of each other. I mean, that's just what keeps me coming back every single time for D&D, and why I gravitate to some of these like actual play podcasts. One of the big ones was Sneak Attack. I know that they ended their they called it quits not too long ago, but if any listeners out there haven't listened to Sneak Attack before, Sneak Attack podcast, they are amazing. They just have such a good around the table like party element and
good camaraderie.
Exactly, a good camaraderie, and they lift each other up, and I mean the story is very rich. Reed does an amazing job at creating his own unique story, and just being able to join into such a good story like that is just so satisfying.
All right. Awesome. All right. Well, this gets us to our last focus for our Meet and Geek episode, which is...
When are you leveling up next?
When are you going to kill us all? When are we going TPK? Right. So last focus is for you specifically as the DM. We're actually going to do a unique take to this last question, which is... why this campaign? For when we talk to our other players, we're going to talk about our characters a little bit in this segment. But for the DM, I mean, Thomas, you were the one who kind of grouped us all together in this. You were the pusher, the bully, if you would. No,
yes, the forcer.
The forcer
one
of
showing up at 1 a.m. and knocking on your door and have you responded to my text yet?
You know that's still why you're not invited to my home anymore. No. But why? Yeah, why? Because you're the one who rallied all of us to, hey, we should do this campaign, but not just campaign. We should make it a podcast. And the question with that is why this? There's dozens of adventures out there and dozens of campaigns that D&D has released officially. There's unofficial ones. There's homebrews. Why Tyranny of Dragons? That's the one that we fell on and chose. And obviously we're doing our own spin, which I'm going to ask you about in a second. But why Tyranny of Dragons?
Well, I'm not sure my answer is very like deep and profound, but the game is called Dungeons and Dragons, and a lot of the adventures I've done are like, oh, you go like infiltrate this like temple in the jungle or this or that, and I'm like, okay, this is all great and good. And the highest level character I've ever gotten up to was like a level 6. And part of me was like, okay. I've done a lot of dungeons. Not a lot of dragons in this game. So, and so when trying to find like craft a great find a good adventure for this podcast, Wizards of the Coast just had compiled and re-released the Tyranny of Dragons, which is the 2 first adventures that they released for 5th edition. Horde of the Dragon Queen and Rise of Tiamat. And I was like, you know what? I bet you there's a dragon or 2 in there. I bet you we could... I
bet we'll find one.
Yeah, it might be in there. First
if we
page.
choose the right path,
gosh.
We might get there.
Right. So I'm like, honestly, like, that's why Tyranny of Dragons, I was like, just need a good old dragon campaign. Just, hey, guess what? You're fighting dragons. You're just playing Dungeons and Dragons.
To the nitty-gritty of Dungeons and Dragons. Give me some dungeons. Give me some dragons.
Yep. Stay on brand is what I'm trying to say.
Stay on brand. All those other adventures, if there's not a dragon, I don't want it.
Why complicate things? You don't need Lich. You just need dragons.
All right. Well, we lost about half of our faithful D&D listeners who are like, I like that campaign. But no. Okay, interesting. So you want to just get down to the fundamentals, get down to because that is the origins of the 5th edition. And for those listeners out there who are like, I have no idea. Because we have actually heard from some fans who are like, I have never even thought of D&D before I started listening to this. 5th edition, just for those listeners, is the latest system update of Dungeons and Dragons. And with that, like Thomas said, the 2 big campaigns where they said, okay, these are the first big things you can do if you're not going to homebrew, meaning create your own adventure, are these 2 things that focus very much on the dragons and the dungeons.
Which, by the way, if there's anybody who's been following us up to this point who doesn't know anything about Dungeons and Dragons, super humbled that you would stick with it for 9 episodes up to this point, knowing nothing about the mechanics and the battle and stuff. So thank you.
Thank you.
That means a lot to us.
Thank you, mother.
Thanks, mom.
Thanks, mom. But yeah. That's awesome. Okay, just getting down to the fundamentals of it. And then, I guess, to finish everything off for this special episode, we're making these special episodes a little shorter. One, to not say, hey, Mickey, we're going to give you more time to edit.
Right.
Here's an hour and a half.
This defeats the purpose.
Yeah. So we're going to try and limit these special episodes to be a little shorter. And I know that might be unfortunate for some people, but we really want to give Mickey and Thomas, who's our first editor, he edits the first draft of everything, to give them the most time for it. But my last kind of question, wrapping everything up, that focuses again on this kind of why this campaign is, how have you brought your own flavor to this campaign? Because Tyranny of Dragons, it's written for you. The basic fundamentals are there. The basic characters, the basic storyline. And I say basic, it's actually super intricate if you dive into any of these kind of campaign manuals. They are crazy intricate. But even then, you want to bring your own spice to it. Right. And your own take to it. And what have you, I guess, how has your approach been to kind of say, okay, this is what they've given me, but here's my own spin on it.
Yeah, well, and I don't think it's a surprise either with what I've talked about earlier in the episode of my spin, if you will, is to just bring it down to like a human level, to humanize it, so to speak, with specifically for you players, you 3 players, the experiences in the keep, to the random conversations, Lance talking to Ardina, things like that, those types of experiences, and being able to fully incorporate each backstory. I mean, that's going to have to break away from the adventure at some point, So, like, at some point, we're just going to go completely off the rails for each character here. And so, being able to add that to where both us as the listeners, but also us as the players, we can feel like we're actually diving into Lance's stuff, which is... I mean, Lance has got some super cool stuff that's been coming out in the past couple episodes, So like it's like what's going on? What's gonna happen next? And I'm just excited to be able to explore that as well. So
yeah, for sure. And
so really, what I'm saying is my unique spin is just all selfish because I want to find out what's gonna happen with Lance and what's gonna happen with Fleetfoot and Mal. So
yes,
so I'm like, this adventure, they did a really good job. I'm gonna ignore it so I could figure out what's going on with these guys over here.
Yeah, it'll be I'm excited to get into and just everything related to each character's backstory. It's very interesting what's been teased so far, and for our listeners, because we record a little bit ahead of time, there are some crazy things coming up for each one of these people. So hang in there, because it gets a little crazy for some of them. Awesome. Well, Thomas, thank you so much for joining into this episode of Meet and Geek, for us to get to know you as a person, as the Dungeon Master, as a self-proclaimed geek and owner of over 170. I'm just going to keep increasing the number as we go.
Every single
170
time.
board games.
Every single time,
Thank you so much. And listeners, thank you so much for tuning in for our episode of Meet and Geek.
If I can give a little shout out, I want to give a shout out to, we just kind of wrapped our first month here of episodes that we released, and we have been just honestly truly humbled by the feedback we've been getting, the reviews that are on Apple Podcasts and like Podchaser, and seeing like where the episodes are being downloaded from. Like,
shout out New Zealand,
right? Like, I expected all of our downloads just to be like in our neighborhoods, you know.
Yeah.
But we're finding people are like downloading episodes from overseas, you know, from New Zealand, as you mentioned. Right now we have 10 in the United Kingdom, Finland, Germany, India, like Ireland, like. Shout out to you, international listeners. You are humbling us a ton, and we're just very grateful for you guys, for everybody. We're just very grateful for everybody for joining us in this adventure, and we're can't wait for more.
Yep. And hopefully, some of those international listeners didn't just click on it, being like, I thought this was a blacksmithing podcast. What the heck? No.
I mean, you come for blacksmithing, you stay for the storytelling. Am I right?
Yeah, exactly.
Am I right?
As we all have gotten into D&D.
As we've all done once or twice before.
You come for blacksmithing, you stay for the storytelling. All right, listeners, thank you so much for listening to this special bonus episode of iCast Fireball, our Meet and Geek episodes. We hope you've enjoyed listening as much as we've enjoyed talking about ourselves in the background, and that you can get to know us more as you also get to know our characters. For wherever you get your podcast from, please leave us a review. It really helps boost our ratings on each podcast service that allows that, and it puts our show in others' recommended feeds. And it also lets us know what you like that we're doing. If you want to write a little longer review or just give us a kind of more personal message, you can always email us at icastfireball2020@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you, and we're hoping to get the word out to set the podcast on fire. All puns intended. Now, to get the most recent, up-to-date content, please make sure you're following us on social media, on Instagram, on Twitter, at icastfireball20. That's the number 20. There you can get possible sneak peeks of upcoming episodes, any scheduling changes that might occur, like, for instance, us now going to the every other week release of the main content, and on our off weeks releasing special bonus episodes. You can also hear interesting insight from the players in DM and behind the scenes shots of us even making this incredibly fun world. Just want to give a quick shout out to our sister podcast run by our Kobold Druid, Ned, right over there. He has a podcast called Improv Tabletop, where he is the game master and runs a mini 1-month adventure using the Fate Accelerated Tabletop system. Whether you like tabletop games, improvisation, or just hearing more from Ned, the little fleeple that we all love, we'd recommend that you give this a listen. Lastly, please like, subscribe, and share this podcast with your fellow wacky adventurers. We really want to get the word out there because we just love creating this, and we hope that we can find some people who find that love in it as well. Until next time, I'm Jacob, aka Lance Thalen, and I'm not going to say around the table, but I will say, give a shout out one more time to our DM, Thomas. Thank you so much, Thomas, for coming out.
Woo!
All right, and let's keep the fire going, and we'll see you next time.
Bye!